Hello, and welcome to another episode of Movie Spoiler Alerts. This is a compilation for all the 8 Best Picture nominees for the 91st Oscars. If you aren't familiar with this channel, we summarize full-length movies for just under 5 minutes, so this compilation should get you good and caught up for the Oscars. The playlist of the individual videos can be found in the cards above. So let's get started. Centuries ago, 5 African tribes war over a meteorite containing the metal vibranium. One warrior ingests a heart-shaped herb affected by the metal and gains superhuman abilities, becoming the first Black Panther. He unites all the tribes except the Jabari to form the nation of Wakanda. The Wakandans use the vibranium to develop advanced technology and isolate themselves from the rest of the world, posing as a third world nation. In 1992, King T'Chaka visits his brother N'Jobu, who is working undercover in Oakland, California. T'Chaka accuses N'Jobu of assisting black market arms dealer Ulysses Claw with stealing vibranium from Wakanda. N'Jobu's partner reveals that he is actually Zuri, another undercover Wakandan, and confirms T'Chaka's suspicions. In present day, following T'Chaka's death, his son T'Challa returns to Wakanda to assume the throne. He and Okoye, the leader of the Dora Milaje regiment, extract Nakia, T'Challa's ex-love, from an undercover assignment so she can attend his coronation ceremony along with his mother Ramonda and his younger sister Shuri. At the ceremony, the Jabari tribe's leader M'Baku challenges T'Challa for the crown in a ritual combat. T'Challa defeats M'Baku and persuades him to yield rather than to die in the combat. After Claw and Eric Stevens steal a Wakandan artifact from a museum, W'Kabi, T'Challa's friend and Okoye's love, urges him to bring Claw back dead or alive. T'Challa, Okoye, and Nakia travel to South Korea where Claw plans to sell the artifact to CIA agent Everett K. Ross. A firefight erupts and Claw attempts to flee but is caught by T'Challa, who reluctantly releases him into Ross's custody. Eric attacks and extracts Claw, as Ross is severely injured protecting Nakia. Rather than pursue Claw, T'Challa takes Ross to Wakanda where their technology can save his life. While Shuri heals Ross, T'Challa confronts Zuri. Zuri explains that N'Jobu planned to share Wakandan technology with the people of African descent around the world to help them conquer their oppressors. As T'Chaka was arresting N'Jobu back in 1992, N'Jobu attacked Zuri, which forced T'Chaka to kill N'Jobu. T'Chaka ordered Zuri to lie that N'Jobu had disappeared and left behind his American son, Eric, in order to maintain the lie. Eric became a U.S. Black Ops soldier, adopting the name Killmonger. Meanwhile, Eric kills Claw and takes his body to Wakanda. He is brought before the tribal elders, revealing his identity and claim to the throne. Eric, aka Killmonger, challenges T'Challa in ritual combat. After killing Zuri, he defeats T'Challa and hurls him over a waterfall. After ingesting the heart-shaped herb, Eric orders the rest of the powerful fruit to be burned, but Nakia is able to steal one. Eric, supported by W'Kabi and his army, prepares to distribute shipments of Wakandan weapons to operatives around the world. Nakia, Shuri, Ramonda, and Ross flee to the Jabari tribe for aid. They find a comatose T'Challa, rescued by the Jabari in repayment for M'Baku's life. Healed by Nakia's herb, T'Challa returns to fight Killmonger, who is now wearing his own suit, and commands W'Kabi and his army to attack T'Challa. Shuri, Nakia, and the Dora Milaje join T'Challa, while Ross remotely pilots a jet to fight and shoot down planes carrying vibranium weapons. M'Baku and the Jabari tribe arrive to reinforce T'Challa. Confronted by Okoye, W'Kabi and his army stand down. Fighting in Wakandan's vibranium mine, T'Challa disrupts Killmonger's suit and stabs him. Killmonger refuses to be healed, choosing to die a free man rather than be incarcerated. T'Challa decides that Killmonger had some valid points and they do need to extend themselves into the outside world, creating a outreach center building in California where N'Jobu died. In a mid-credit scene, we see T'Challa appears before the United Nations to reveal that Wakandan's true nature to the world. In a post-credit scene, Shuri helps Bucky Barnes with his recuperation. The film opens in 1960s New York, with bouncer Frank Tonielip Vallelonga searching for a new job while the Copacabana undergoes renovations. He is interviewed to be a driver by famed black pianist Doc Don Shirley, who will be doing an 8-week-long tour throughout the Deep South. The plan is to return by Christmas. Tony is given a copy of The Green Book, which is a guide for black travelers of motels, restaurants, and gas stations that serve blacks, as many businesses in this region of the country won't serve them. The tour begins well, and the movie goes on a bit like a buddy cop film. Tony is a bit too gruff and rough, and Doc is a bit too refined. Over time, they grow closer. Tony is impressed with Doc's talent and becomes appalled by how racist people can be towards Doc the second he leaves the stage. Doc is attacked at a bar one night, and Tony saves him, saying that Doc should never go anywhere without him. Throughout the journey, Doc helps Tony write letters to his wife, which deeply moves her. Later, Doc has a homosexual encounter which nearly gets him arrested, but Tony bribes the police. Tony and Doc are later arrested in another city while driving after Tony punches an officer for insulting him. Doc ends up calling the Attorney General, Robert F. Kennedy, who orders the governor to release Doc. Tony is amazed, but Doc feels humiliated after having to make the call. This leads to an argument, where Tony states that he is blacker than Doc is, and where Doc explains that he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere, because white people hate him because he is black, and he feels like he can't identify with the people of his own race either. On the night of the final performance in Birmingham, Alabama, Doc is refused entry to a white-only dining room, the same room that he will be performing in just a few minutes later. Doc refuses to play, and Tony and him go to a predominantly black blues club, where Doc plays on stage for a bit. The two head back in a terrible snowstorm and make it home by Christmas Eve. Tony invites Doc up, which at first Doc is reluctant, but he ends up being welcomed by the whole family for dinner as the film ends. The film opens in 1970, with a maid named Cleo working alongside another maid named Adela in Mexico City in the household of Sofia, her husband Antonio, Sofia's mother, and their 4 young children. Antonio eventually leaves his wife, telling the kids that he is going to Quebec. Cleo ends up getting pregnant from her boyfriend Furman, and after telling him the news, he disappears. Cleo tracks him down, but Furman threatens her if she ever shows up again. The family goes to a friend's place for New Year's, where a fire breaks out. Everyone helps to try to put out the fire. Cleo and Sofia's mother go to shop for a crib when a violent protest breaks out. A man is gunned down in front of Cleo, and another man points a gun at Cleo, who turns out to be Furman, and then runs off. Just then, Cleo's water breaks. It takes a while to get to the hospital due to traffic, but unfortunately the baby girl is stillborn. The family later goes on a beach vacation where Sofia reveals to the children that their father is leaving, and their father is currently at the house collecting his things. At the beach, 2 of the children nearly drown, but Cleo saves them. On the beach, Cleo breaks down from the guilt for being relieved that she doesn't have a child, because she didn't want to have the baby at all. They return home as the film ends, with Cleo telling Adela that she has so much to tell her as a plane flies overhead. The movie opens with Jack, a famous country singer who struggles with depression, drugs, and alcohol. Jack visits a local bar and sees a performance by Allie, and the two end up spending the night talking, where she explains the struggles she's been having trying to enter into the music industry for not having the right look. Jack invites Allie to his next show and gets her to perform on stage, and the audience loves her. She begins touring with him and their romance begins. During the tour, they visit the ranch where Jack grew up and his father is buried, only to learn that Jack's brother, Bobby, sold the ranch. Jack later punches Bobby over this, and Bobby quits as his tour manager. Bobby later explains that he did tell Jack about the sale, but Jack was too drunk to remember any of it. On tour, Allie meets Rez, a record producer, who offers her a contract. Allie changes to singing pop music. Jack passes out and misses Allie's performance, and later wakes up at a friend's house. There he proposes to Allie with a ring made from a guitar string, and they marry that day at the local church. During Allie's SNL performance, Bobby and Jack reconcile. Allie is nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. At the awards, Jack performs while incredibly drunk, and Allie wins Best New Artist. During her acceptance speech, however, Jack stumbles on stage and ends up wetting himself. Jack goes to rehab for 2 months after this. There, he tells a counselor about attempting suicide when he was 13. Jack apologizes to Allie, and she wants him to go on tour with her in Europe, but Rez won't allow it, so she cancels the tour. Rez later accuses Jack of holding Allie back. That evening, while Allie is performing, Jack hangs himself in their garage. Allie is extremely upset. She is visited by Bobby, who explains that Jack's death was his own fault, not hers. As the film concludes, Allie performs a song that Jack had written. One thing to note, this film is not out on Blu-ray yet, so I had to work with the available footage to get this out before the Oscars. The film follows the life of former Vice President Dick Cheney, following his life from beginning as an electrical lineman to becoming a White House intern in the Nixon administration, where he meets Donald Rumsfeld. Cheney begins to move through politics with the support of his wife Lynn and their daughters Mary and Liz. Cheney becomes Chief of Staff for President Gerald Ford and Rumsfeld becomes Secretary of Defense. After Ford is ousted, Cheney becomes the representative for Wyoming, even after having a heart attack during the campaign. He makes his way to Secretary of Defense under George H.W. Bush, during which his daughter Mary comes out as a lesbian. Cheney eventually decides to back out of politics to prevent Mary from media scrutiny. Cheney becomes president of Halliburton, a large oil company. He is invited by George W. Bush to become his running mate. Cheney accepts, but wants to control the energy and foreign policy. Bush is elected, Cheney becomes vice president, and then we see Cheney being the man calling the shots behind a lot of terrible things like destruction, torture, war profiteering, and death. Later, Cheney nearly dies from a heart failure, but receives a transplant. A few years later, we see his daughter Liz, under direction from Cheney, taking opposition to gay marriage to appease conservative voters, and this upsetting her lesbian sister Mary. As the film ends, we see Cheney stating to the camera that he has no regrets over what he did during his career, and that he feels that the ends justify the means. In a mid-credits scene, we see a conservative calling the film a biased attack, while two panelists discuss the next Fast and the Furious movie.
In the early 1970s, Ron Stallworth is hired as the first black officer in the Colorado Springs Police Department. He requests a transfer from the record room to go undercover and is assigned to go to a civil rights rally. Stallworth meets Patrice, the president of the Black Student Union at Colorado College, who was later assaulted by an officer, Landers. After the rally, Stallworth is reassigned to the intelligence division. Stallworth calls the Ku Klux Klan and pretends to be white. Stallworth recruits Jewish coworker Flip Zimmerman to act as him in order to meet members in person. Zimmerman attends a meeting and learns of a possible upcoming attack. Stallworth begins regular conversations with David Duke, the Grand Wizard. Duke visits for Stallworth's induction into the Klan. After initiation, a member's wife, Connie, leaves to place a bomb at Patrice's house. Stallworth alerts local police officers. Seeing many officers present, Connie leaves the bomb under Patrice's car. Stallworth tackles her as she tries to flee, but uniformed officers detain and beat him despite his protest that he is working undercover. The KKK members arrive, park next to Patrice's car, set off the bomb, and are killed in the explosion. Zimmerman arrives and frees Stallworth, and Connie is arrested. While celebrating that night, Stallworth wears a hidden microphone and tricks a drunken Landers into bragging about his assault on Patrice, leading to his arrest. The police chief orders them to end their investigation and keep all details from the public. Stallworth receives one last call from Duke and reveals to Duke that he is black. Later, Patrice and Stallworth are interrupted by a knock on the door, but no one is there. Through the hallway window, they see a flaming cross surrounded by Klan members. The film closes with footage from the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia.
The film opens in 1970 with Farouk Bulsara watching a local band, Smile, perform at a nightclub. Farouk meets with guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor and offers to replace their lead singer. Joined by bassist John Deacon, the band, that goes on to be known as Queen, begins to work on their debut album. They sign a contract with EMI Records, and Farouk legally changes his name to Freddie Mercury. Freddie also gets engaged to Mary Austin. Their album becomes a success in America, and during their US tour, Freddie begins questioning his sexuality. In 1975, Queen records their fourth album, A Night at the Opera, but the band leaves EMI Records after the label refuses to release the album's lead single, Bohemian Rhapsody. The song is a huge hit, and during their worldwide tour, Freddie begins an affair with the band's manager, Paul Prenter. Freddie admits to Mary that he is bisexual, but she assures him that he is gay. The band continues to be a success through the early 80s, but Freddie's attitude begins to change. During a party, he falls for a waiter named Jim Hutton, but Jim tells Freddie to find him when he learns to like himself. The press begin to pry into Freddie's social life and his sexuality. Freddie's relationship with his bandmates gets worse after announcing a solo record deal. He moves to Munich to work on his solo album, getting heavily involved in drugs and orgies with Paul Prenter. His ex-fiancée Mary, now pregnant, urges him to return to the band, who have been offered a spot for the benefit concert Live Aid. Paul withheld this information from Freddie, which enrages Freddie, and he leaves Paul. In retaliation, Paul goes public with Freddie's sexual escapades. After asking for forgiveness from the band, Freddie and the band are given a last-minute slot at Live Aid. Beforehand, though, Freddie reveals that he has contracted AIDS, and the band members embrace him with love and support. Freddie is reunited with the waiter Jim Hutton and his ex-fiancée Mary, and the band goes on to perform at Live Aid, with his family watching him perform on TV. The movie then shows the entire set that they played for Live Aid with a variety of hits, which is still considered as one of the greatest performances of all time by many critics. The concert is a success, and Freddie spends the remainder of his life with Jim Hutton. After dying from AIDS in 1991, the remaining members of Queen create the Mercury Phoenix Trust to help combat AIDS worldwide.
The film opens in 1708, with Britain at war with France. Queen Anne is on the throne, but in between being sick and bored, she isn't interested in ruling. Her advisor and secret lover, Sarah Churchill, runs the nation. Sarah is met with opposition in Parliament from Robert Harley, who is against the doubling of property taxes that Sarah is proposing. Meanwhile, Abigail Hill, the poor cousin of Sarah, arrives looking for a job. Abigail's father gambled away their money and status and lost his daughter to a German man. Abigail starts out working as a maid, but works her way up into the Queen's favor, becoming the lady of the bedchamber by helping her with her various ailments. This all makes Sarah jealous. Harley approaches Abigail, hoping to use her to spy on Sarah and the Queen. Abigail finds out about Sarah and the Queen's secret lesbian relationship. Abigail decides to seduce the Queen herself while Sarah is distracted with the war. Sarah discovers Abigail's intentions and tries to have her sent away. Abigail drugs Sarah, causing her to fall from her horse and be missing for several days. The Queen believes Sarah has abandoned her, and while continuing her relationship with the Queen, Abigail is allowed to marry Baron Samuel Masham, making Abigail a baroness and noble once again. Sarah returns, injured, and gives the Queen an ultimatum, to send Abigail away or she will reveal letters of their sexual past. Sarah destroys the letters later out of guilt, but still is stripped of her powers and sent away. Abigail claimed that Sarah was embezzling money, and Sarah and her husband are exiled. The Queen realizes what has happened, that Abigail was only doing what she did to gain nobility, and that the Queen's relationship with Sarah was ruined by Abigail. The Queen shows her dominance over Abigail by making her massage her leg as the film ends.
So that was a summary for all the 91st Oscar Best Picture nominees. If you have another film you'd like to see us spoil, please let us know in the comments below. Check out movie spoiler alerts on social media, and thanks for watching.